All right, good afternoon, and again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Andrea Cumpston, and I'm Communications Director at the Enterprise Wireless Alliance. Before we begin today's webinar, PLMR or PoC, which wireless solution when, I'd like to go over a little bit of the guidelines for today's participation. You are in listen-only mode, and to ask a question, please type it into the chat area of the interface. You should see a chat box in the bottom left corner of the web interface, and you can type your question into that space, select send, and we'll be able to see it here and answer it during the Q&A period. Ask your question at any time, and we will answer it, or it will be answered during the question and answer and discussion period. EWA is recording today's webinar and will make it available, and the flyers that will be discussed during the session in a follow-up email after the webinar is concluded. Introducing today's speakers and moderating this panel is EWA President Mark Crosby. Mark has served as EWA's President and CEO since 2004. For much longer, he's been an advocate for the efficient and effective use of spectrum. He is a member of the Commerce Spectrum Management Advisory Committee, which advises the Assistant Secretary for Communications and Information at NTIA. In addition, Mark serves as Secretary of the Land Mobile Communications Council. Mark?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for everybody on the call. I know it's important to be the Secretary of the Land Mobile Communications Council, but perhaps even more important, I'm the Treasurer. If you control the money, that's good. That's sort of important. So, everybody on the call, again, thank you for devoting an hour this afternoon to EWA in this, which we think is an important webinar. You know, this has been a subject that has been escalating this year, if you will. There's been a lot of chatter. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of people going, this may be a great thing. You know, push-to-talk over cellular, particularly. You know, there's a lot of people in our industry have experience with Nextel and Sprint with the push-to-talk, and one of the new players, of course, it appears to be escalating. They push in the land mobile is AT&T, and you know, and people go, well, what are we going to do? How do we react? And what is this, a good thing or a bad thing? And you know, I think it sort of said, you know, we should do a webinar and cover the risks and rewards. When is it a good time to, you know, when is it appropriate to have a push-to-talk over cellular solution? When may not it be? Or when would it be a good idea to maybe have a combination or both? You know, this is a complicated world, and the industries have various and different needs and requirements from time to time. And you know, what a company with 5 units may require is different than a company that has, you know, 5,000 units. And so it's never an all in, or it's always a maybe, and you need to do a little homework. So before I get to the speakers, I think that if EWA has a role or a responsibility to its members, at over 1,000 members, nearly 500 wireless sales and service providers, all the major vendors are members of EWA, also serve on our board of directors, and we have, you know, we certainly represent perhaps better than anyone else in this industry, the private land mobile industry. And so it's our job to educate and to help members make the right decisions. So we thought it would be good to have a webinar on you know, when and where and when would it be a good idea to have PoC or private carrier. So, but EWA has collateral material that we make available to our members, so as they craft solutions or look at all these various solutions. But certainly, you know, when you win a customer or whether you're an individual, you know, licensee, when you have to make these decisions, it isn't always about the cost. And it isn't always about, you know, the security. There's a multitude factors that have to be considered, I think, before, and most of the big companies, they go through this process. So when people go, oh, they're saying that this is going to, POC is going to, it's going to be the future and it's going to take, I go, well, wait a minute, maybe not, but I think there's all kinds of factors that have to be considered day to day, whether you're a small company, medium-sized company, large company, or whether you're a wireless sales and service provider serving these entities. There's all these factors that have to be weighed in. And so just briefly before we get to the great panel we have, and I'll introduce them at that time, there are tools out there. Some of them are available today. Here's one. You got to do your due diligence, and coverage is very important. So they have these tools. OpenSignal is a capability that provides coverage maps for all the national cellular carriers. And again, these slides will be made available. You can have them, and we're recording this, of course, and you'll be able to get this presentation off our web. But and some of what this sort of shows, here's a carrier's coverage map. The orange one on the left, it looks like it's 100%, but actually it's not, because the map on the right is from actual users, and the green is very good, and the red isn't so good. And so there's information out there before somebody jumps to one solution or another that perhaps should be vetted. Here's a tool that EWA has. We have and Frank Anderson's going to cover this a little bit more because he was one of the principal authors of this. People go, well, this is the cheapest way to go, and people go, oh, okay, maybe not. So EWA has an investment model where there are 80 cost factors, and almost instantaneously, and it varies. And what it looks at is, if I do a POC solution with a national carrier and I have 50 units, or if I go with a private carrier and I have 50 units and I got to buy the units, or I lease the units, and the monthly rate would be, or I'm going to have my own private internal system where I own my towers, I have to do the maintenance myself, et cetera, all those cost factors are in this investment model that EWA crafted. And a lot of people said, well, we have a model too, and I go, well, that may be, but EWA's model, it's neutral. We're not influencing anybody to make any decisions one way or another. Our investment model is just a tool that can be used to arrive at what will the annual cost be the first year, second year, and cumulatively for 10 years. And this investment model has been available for over a year. A lot of people are using it, and we're happy to have people test it, use it. It's very sophisticated, and we think it's another tool, or for people doing due diligence, because people say, well, this is the best way to go. Why? Well, it's the cheapest. Well, this will sort of prove it, that it's the cheapest or not, or at least expensive. We also have brochures, that examine, and we have our wireless sales and service people, we hand them out for free. You can put your own logos on them, and they hand them out to customers. And what it does is say, this is the good news, this is the bad news. Here's the risks, here's the rewards, versus a POC solution versus a private carrier solution, or versus it all depends. These are issues that must be observed, must be studied, must be understood, concerning cost, productivity, reliability, safety, et cetera. What are the pros and the cons? And we make these available to our members. Again, they're unbiased. They're going, these are the issues that you must look at when you make these decisions. So EWA has a portfolio of tools and et cetera that can be used, and we're happy to make them available. But I think another part of as we said, and why we're conducting this webinar is to have experts speak to these issues, and believe me, we're very, very pleased to have the panelists that we have today. And I'm gonna introduce them first. One is Mark Crow. Many of you know Mark Crow. Mark is currently the president of Bearcom. 37, 38, maybe 40 now. Offices around the country. Mark has a very unique perspective, and he can discuss when or where when these various solutions work, and when the other ones may need to be reconsidered or considered. Mark was with Motorola. He was there when Push-to-talk Nextel was there with product development, distribution. Mark has a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience with this, and so Mark's going to be our first speaker in about 10 seconds. Our second speaker today, we're thrilled to have Frank Anderson, 40 years in experience. His ABEEP is based out of Joliet, southwest of Chicago. JBC Kenwood Next Edge Digital SMR Network. This is quite impressive. 60 towers, contiguous coverage in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. So Frank has a perspective of, these customers like this, these customers like this, and can speak to that with his experience, not only selling and servicing wireless solutions, but also being a major private carrier in a 3-state area. And our third speaker today is Jeff Forrester. So we have Mark Crow, who's there with equipment development, distribution, applications. Frank, who has customers very close. And then we have Jeff Forrester, who is an end user, licensee. He was at Ford Motor Company and has had firsthand experience with developing, purchasing, maintaining all factors of all types of solutions. So Jeff has a very unique perspective, and those are our panelists today. So let's go back to, where are we here? No, that's Jeff's slide. So let's go back to Mark. Mark, why don't, if you would be so kind, share what you learned, what your experience. This is an interesting conversation. Love to hear your views on PoC versus
Well, so would love to. Thank you, everybody, and welcome, everybody. There's a lot of probably names on the line here that I'm very familiar with. I am Katie, the chairman, for sure. I'm very familiar with her, and my regards to her as well. So, the view in a couple of words, I would say, first of all, when we think about this topic, people have the propensity, regardless of what side of the table you're on, whether you are the customer, the sales entity, or the manufacturer, people have a tendency to think about this as, wow, the sky is falling. It's the end of an era. The market as we know it today will go away. And I remember that sentiment being the manufacturer. And I remember that sentiment as far back as 1995 and 96 when I went from the dealer business that we had started at Motorola and went still with Motorola, but moved to Reston to support the launch of Nextel. And I did it because really we looked at it as an extension of our push-to-talk business and what we thought then would be the gold standard of the push-to-talk business and delivering two-way radio performance to the enterprise space. But what it really did when we look back, and then we'll fast forward to the question here, is what it really did is it created a broad acceptance of the very best voice technology that had been in the market and that till today has ever been in the market. You can argue, you can make a lot of arguments and a lot of different use cases, but at the end of the day, the reason push-to-talk, and whether whatever form it comes in, and it goes beyond PLMR or PoC, but you could talk about push-to-talk over voice over IP over Wi-Fi and bring that into the equation if you wanted to complicate things further. But at the end of the day, if you take push-to-talk at the rawest sense, it delivers a certain utility to a customer that is here to stay. And once you accept that and you know that, part of how I used to deal with the issues, or hey, is two-way radio going to go away, I returned from the Nextel world and realized that not only had it not gone away, but this business had grown larger and faster than previous to Nextel. It was because there were so many more users who really couldn't make a business case out of leveraging a push-to-talk solution, and it was for the Nextel integrated product that allowed a lot of two-way radio users to realize the utility of that product. So today when I think about it, you talked about total cost of ownership from a customer perspective, which is clearly one way to look at how you decide what's right for the customer and how the customer decide what's right for themselves. But also, what is the utility you want to get out of that device, and what's the best solution? So is it voice, quick, bursty messaging? Is it data? Is it a combination of both? to me, those are the kinds of things that really have to come into play when you think about a pure two-way radio solution, when you think about a push-to-talk over cellular, when you think about, customer-owned and operated versus, private carrier. All of those things come into play. So it is about the dollars and cents for sure, but it's also about feature sets. It's about applications. Is it locationing? Is it pure voice? Is it, does a customer want to be in an OpEx situation versus CapEx? The good news is, as we move farther down the road, there are more solutions and more alternatives for customers. And I think as we step back, we'll realize that the market's not going away. It's changing for sure. And it's not, AT&T being more aggressive in the space with a lot of our peers out there really isn't different than what Sprint did, post-Nextel. But I think it's gaining some more traction in that there's a lot other push-to-talk clients out there, and there's a lot of other alternatives. And so at the end of the day, when the decision comes to commercial carrier versus private, that's really about a customer's financial view on what they're prepared. It's about the customer segment, I think, and what they want to get out of their communication system, and what is the number one? What's the number one attribute? Is it a core, short, voice type of an application, or do they need a more robust solution? And of course, the coverage issue is always there: in building, out of building. Do I want to cover a city, a state? Do I need to be, do I need any kind of IP connectivity? And so I think there's a lot of considerations here, but from a sales perspective, the customer will have more choices moving forward, and I think the best educated customer is going to look at all the criteria that, Mark laid out in terms of his total cost of ownership model, the coverage model. All those things come into play, and then at the edge, what is that customer really going to value in that device outside of the infrastructure and the other two criteria that we talked about? So those would be my high-level comments on how to kind of look at this, if you will, Mark.
Excellent, Mark. We're going to have questions following. I have a couple specific questions for you, but let's turn to Frank. Frank, you serve many vertical markets in your space. Tell us about which ones do they have favorites? Do they have preferences? I know this is, as Mark said, this is everything sort of moving forward, changing, adapting. What's your experience? What do you see now, and what do you see in the future?
Okay, thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody, and thanks for attending today. First, I want to say, Mark Crow, you really did a good job of summing up how vast our market is. I have a lot of dealers that call me, being a large operator, and they're worried like doom and gloom that, oh my God, CyDar is going to take over our business. So what I did is I looked at our vertical markets. I took 3 of our customer base vertical markets that represent these companies represent over 1,000 radios on our network. We got private ambulance companies, school buses, both public and private contracted school buses, and we have private security companies. These 3, I took a look at a little deeper. Does CyDar fit them? Our many ambulance companies some of them are small with just a few cars, all the way up to companies that have hundreds of ambulances in the Chicago market. They provide everything from med service to actual first responders. A couple of our companies actually are contracted to be the first responder in certain fire and ambulance districts. And they depend on the almost instant one-to-many communication that our network provides, plus the wide area coverage that we have. School buses, we have lots and lots of school buses. We have private school buses and some that are actually owned by the school districts. In Illinois, we may be a little unique. We have a state law that requires a school bus to have a two-way radio. In Illinois, the use of a cell phone by the bus driver is not legal. And the law requires the bus to be in communication with the dispatcher whenever the bus is in operation, which kind of helps our business. Private security companies, They're very similar to police agencies, except they don't have police powers in most cases. But they do need instant push-to-talk and wide area coverage. And PLC would need to be mission critical for a lot of our LMR users. The majority of our customers are large fleets. The wide area network fits the large fleet very well. Smaller guys like plumbing or heating, air conditioning, maybe they would be served well by Push-to-talk Over Cellular. The permanently mounted radio is very dependable, very long life. Its attributes of a handheld microphone, loudspeaker, specifications for dust and vibration and moisture may be difficult for a cell phone to copy. Even when cell phones are accessorized to mimic a mobile telephone or mobile radio, the considerations about the battery and charging, does that cause a problem in the car? Would it be more susceptible to theft than a regular two-way radio? If we took time to examine a couple other vertical markets, which I really didn't spend time on, but if we took trash collecting or we took concrete companies, once again, the push-to-talk handheld microphone would be a factor. Is it going to work well with a dirty, wet glove? Even in our business, after a few years, handheld microphones many times are replaced in those high-use environments. The day will probably come that PLC will be mission critical. When it's more than just an application and it's really prioritized by the network, I'm sure we'll see it more prevalent. But history, like Sandy Hook, like Boston Marathon, these events can clog the network. You guys can remember, I'm sure, the Boston videos after the bombing and seeing all the crowd in the background holding their phones, sending messages, sending texts, trying to call loved ones. Even today, you guys who get the Inside Tower's daily bulletin, today they mentioned the situation in Tennessee where the fires have actually burned some cell sites and they have spotty coverage. The emergency managers and the governor there is asking people to refrain from using their cell phones. I'm not sure how good that request would be. No one publicly probably use them anyway, but they're trying to get people to not use their cell phones. During these natural disasters, historically the LMR radio is the respected communications tool. Also in Illinois, we may be a little unique that cell phones in cars must be hands-free. So the costs of those accessories need to also come into consideration. The wireless investment model on the EWE website is a great tool to help compute those costs. I would encourage folks to look at this model on the website. All of the costs, both CapEx and OpEx, are available for you to put in there. The staff took a lot of time putting this together, so I'd like you guys to take a look at the thing and try to use it. It does help compute the real costs involved in not only a cellular network or comparing it to a private network, private carrier network, or an internal network where you would own your own equipment. It has things like tower rent in there and future maintenance and replacement costs. One item that a lot of customers overlook when they're comparing our service with cellular is the taxes. So this inspired me. Yesterday I had the office send me one of my phone bills. So I took a look at my phone bills yesterday, and I was a little surprised because I, like most of us, probably don't look at them very much. But here's what I found on the bill. Federal Universal Service Charge, regulatory charge, administrative charge, Illinois State 911 fee, Illinois Telecom Relay Service fee, Illinois State Telecom Excise Tax, and local Joliet Municipal Telecom Tax. It's kind of amazing everybody had their hands out there, that the taxes are something we need to take into consideration. In the investment model, you can add those taxes in there and think about that when you're talking about people that expect cellular to be cheaper. There are other costs that sometimes the salespeople don't think about. The other item is life expectancy of the hardware. Once again, the investment model has a place to talk about replacement costs and maintenance. In my example, we We built and started loading our Digitalk network in 2008. The radios that were put in service in 2008 are still out there. And even when someone like that would cancel or go out of business, many times we'll buy their radios back, bring them in, flash new firmware, clean them up, put new accessories on them, and sell them as a reconditioned radio. Lord knows how long those are going to last, but it seems that there's still a future with that equipment. In our case, our manufacturer, who has a whole new generation of wide area networking coming out, has not required us to forklift the equipment, but has developed firmware for the old radios that will be frequency agile and able to go on the new roaming systems in the future. So those radios will continue to be operational for some time to come. So I'm not against cellular at all. I think it's enhancement to what we do, but I don't think it fits everybody. Like, some people are beating the drum saying that, cellular is going to replace LMR. It may someday, but it's going to take a long time. Mark?
Thank you, Frank. You reminded me of a discussion I had not that long ago with one of our great members, board members, Tim Totten. He's with UPS. And he did a presentation once on what to do and what not to do if you approach a big company or any company and you got this new whiz-bang product. So he says that most of the decisions now, big companies, and I don't want to steal any thunder from Jeff, but it's a good segue into Jeff. A lot of the decisions are made by IT people. And so you're going there, you're talking to an IT guy, and you got a radio in your hand. And he said one of the things, never tell an IT guy, I love this, he could ask, well, how long is this going to last? And you go, well, this radio will last 10 years. He'll throw you out because nothing in his world lasts 10 years. Things usually last 12 months to 18 months. So Tim always, it was so funny, he said, never tell an IT guy you have a solution that's going to last more than 18 months because he won't believe you. Because in his world, the turnover is so much quicker. Our third speaker is Jeff, and so Jeff's, and I've known Jeff for, I hate to admit how long, Jeff, but at least a couple decades maybe, is now, his perspective is obviously from the end user that is using this device. You can read his background. He's been in the automotive industry for a long time, working with General Motors and Ford, now at Ford Direct, and has had a lot of experience in these type of in this decision and these type of decisions. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll put your slide up.
All right, very good. Thanks, Mark. You're right. That was a good segue. In that one of the things that you're going to be dealing with when you try to make a decision on which direction to go in your company is going to be the different cultures, the different mindsets that are all there. And I don't want to touch on that, but let me back up just a minute first. Better than 20 years ago, I inherited all the spectrum at Ford Motor Company. I think I was one of the few people left there that had a Tech Plus ham radio operator's license, and so I was recruited to take that over. And I spent the next 20 years at Ford handling all the regulatory matters, and I was even involved with some of the radio folks for debugging issues we had and upgrading technology and so forth. And during that time, I struck up relationships with people at General Motors and at Chrysler, and I worked with Dave Newth over at Chrysler, and we did some spectrum planning together for Chrysler. And I ended up leaving Ford to go chase my fame and fortune in consulting, and I ended up instead taking a job over at General Motors as a senior buyer there in telecommunications. And the reason being was Sprint had just announced that they were going to shut down that IDEN network. And, by that time I knew everybody in the industry and in the business and everything else, and it looked like an opportunity for me to go in after having helped shape the spectrum at Ford and Chrysler, to go in and help shape what was going to happen at GM. So it looked like it just looked like the right direction for it at the right time. So anyway, 2011, I was hired in there, and we began an RFP process to replace that IDEN network, but also to look at DAS solutions and everything that was out there. and we brought in everyone. We brought in all the cell providers. We brought in all the different radio companies. We brought in all the different DAS providers, and this went on for some almost 2.5 years probably that we went through this. We present a solution. They're easy to any solution that you end up picking is easy to pick apart for one thing or another because there's just a lot of trade-offs in that environment, and I'll touch more on that in a little bit. But at any rate, because I have such a short time here, I'm just going to say that in 2013, purchasing made the recommendation that we had to go with the DMR solution in the plants to replace the item that were virtually getting shut off right at that moment. That was the purchasing perspective. I ended up watching the IT folks then take the ball on that, and they, after doing a feature functionality review, they decided that this Push-to-talk Over Cellular was the way to go. And this slide that you're seeing up here, avoiding a seamlessly flawless business case. What happens is how this business case trumped all the work that we'd done on the RFP was that various factions in the company, like the plants, they had old Wi-Fi systems that needed upgrading, and there was everybody wanted a smartphone at that time, particularly one paid for by the company. So the feature functionality there, taking pictures of things down on the plant floor or whatever and sending those around, that was already being done to some extent. So it was all these various interests and factions, more or less, worked together to put this plan together. It seemed like the right plan to do, and so in early 2014, that the launch began with that, which started off with Wi-Fi upgrades in all the facilities, costly Wi-Fi upgrades, I might add, and then deployment planning and rollout of a solution that never really that didn't deliver what was promised effectively. And we spent probably the next. I had a catbird seat to it because I was in purchasing, watching the IT folks trying to make this all work, and there were some damn smart folks there. They were working on the cellular, and they did everything they could to make it all to pull it all together and make it work. And the challenges were just something else. You had to see it to believe it. But anyway, what happened while they were doing this, while they were working on all this cellular solution, that the plants were going out to the local radio shops and getting short-term solutions. They were bringing in DMR systems for them there and setting them up, or maybe even the old analog systems that were redeployed or something. And they were using that to actually run production with for new lines and everything else. And basically the word got back to the CEO that wasn't going to work for the plants. They ended up backing out of that and going with a DMR solution. And that was quite an event there too, seeing that all take place. But again, with the catbird seat I had, I saw this all happening. When they finally did go with the DMR solution, I pushed to try to get an opportunity to run that or oversee what was going on with that or participate in it in a major way anyway. That didn't happen, and so I made a few phone calls, and now I'm at Ford Direct. So that's pretty much my experience with that. I hate to summarize it like that because it's a topic that I could talk about for 2 or 3 hours. But anyway, that's the things that you have to really look for, the gotchas in this thing, like I said, are the different cultures, the different factions. The IT folks have a completely different perspective than a radio person would, for sure. And it's the trade-offs, and if you do this feature functionality cafeteria style survey within the company, which anybody's going to want to do, can you really deliver the feature and the functionality? And if you can, at what cost? So there's just really, you're almost kidding yourself when you undertake those kinds of surveys, because what you actually can deliver is going to be frequently something that's far different from what they thought they volunteered to get, or that they thought they wanted for the ultimate solution. So that's
Jeff, let me ask you a question, because I think one of the I have obviously a cell phone and things, and when I have issues, I got to track down and go to Google and go, where's the nearest X store, right? So there's a retail store I go to, and the kids in there, they're really smart and a lot smarter than I am. I should ask my 16-year-old daughter. She knows more about phones and IT than I ever will. But with a project that big, how did they handle maintenance problems, trouble tickets? Because that's if like Frank's customers and Mark's customers at Bearcom stuff, maintenance is huge, right? Because nothing lasts. You get the batteries go, people drop them, the antennas break, things happen, right? So, and I can imagine on a manufacturing floor, you're going to have issues. So what was the proposal? Was it good? Did it work? How did they handle maintenance and trouble tickets, and how did that all? You must have had some effort towards that.
Oh yeah, I know. I like that question because that turned out to be such a huge topic. It was one of those things that you more or less overlooked. But the old radio systems were all tied into the local emergency services, fire, police, everything else. They had all that. There's the entire scheme. The security was involved. There's plant. There's different segments of the plant and maintenance, everything else. What do they do when they have a problem and can't communicate? And that turned into months. I'm not kidding you, months worth of meetings where they went back and forth about how they were going to enter trouble tickets for a particular problem, how it was going to escalate, where it was going to escalate to, who it was going to escalate to. So it's just anticipate spending about a third of your time redefining what it is that you're going to be doing with all that in the event that you try to change to a technology that's popular or that you think might be the next best choice. It's there's an entire history built into all that has to be replicated and supported and worked on. So big challenge, a really big challenge to go through technology change like that.
Well, let me ask the question for Mark to Mark and Frank as well. So maintenance and systems. How important wireless systems are today's business, and mission critical, of course. This has to be one of the legs on the stool, right? I mean, the maintenance and who gets priority for things to be fixed and so forth, whether it be a private wireless private carrier or a PoC solution. This must be a big factor, right, Mark?
Yeah, I would say it is, and I remember I worked with Jeff a little bit on an implementation, and other customers in the manufacturing space in particular that really had to leverage more than just a traditional core two-way radio technology, but had to leverage either the Wi-Fi network or their push-to-talk over cellular because of the kind of information that needed to go from point A to point B, whether it was data signaling from machine to machine, whether it was maintenance on the line, whether it was the ability to take a picture on the line and transmit that within a campus environment so that people can respond real time, whether it was just directions via a very efficient voice network that was privately owned. So, when I think about some of those environments as it relates to maintenance, the way I understand you're talking about it, the ability to bring in multiple technologies and create a solution was pretty powerful to the customer. And when you talk about maintenance on the equipment itself, the hardware, that became an important piece of total cost of ownership, right? And being able to create a managed service environment around the solution, which really was appealing to a lot of customers.
Yeah, because I think, would you agree then, I know Frank had to drop off, change the phone. I mean, the businesses and the mission, this isn't a disposable product. I mean, my cell phone, it goes bad, or I nuke the battery somehow because I didn't know how to charge it. It's disposable. You get another one. Not quite the same when you're dealing with business enterprises and utilities and manufacturers. So I think if you're a person touting or promoting PoC, I mean, this is an issue I think that people should pay attention to. This is, they don't look at it as disposable. No. This is like one of the key operative tools I have to compete, to be productive, to protect my employees. Would you agree that this is, not that they necessarily should lead with it, but
absolutely. I mean, I gave you the example of the manufacturing line and shutting down a line or a refinery or that maintenance environment where if you don't have the right business critical solution in place, you become so dependent on it from a maintenance perspective. The ability to sell a managed service, to wrap the maintenance around it, to do some NOC type of surveying of those devices. The criticality of what a lot of these larger customers and smaller customers too are depending on, is unbelievable. I mean, it's become so core to the conversation from a sales perspective that, when you go on some of these customer sites, you've got to be certified to get on that site. With some of those customers, and you have to have a history of being on that site. And so the ability for your communication equipment to work the right way and to have the ability to relay either signaling from point A to point B or the right level of coordination information has become critical. And I think it's absolutely a core selling point, depending on the environment you're in. And if it's a small business and they're relying, and there's only, if you've got a company, with 4 people or just 5 devices, think about one of those or 2 of those devices being out of touch. So you could scale this thing from the very, very small business to large refineries, and the impact is the same in terms of the proportion of the business.
Well, I'd like to add one of the things that, again, I go back to the culture, the various cultures that are inside a particular given business, but as far as IT is concerned, there's already a support group in place, and that's been a very well-defined support group that's handled PCs and printer problems and so on and so forth. And they try to shoehorn the maintenance of that of a push-to-talk over cellular into that frame or focus. Well, when you're doing that, you're dealing with the people that already set that up, and they're telling you what they can and can't do, and you're saying, no, this is what you must do. And that was, I think, part of the challenge that we had. You're right. It incurred some huge costs, if nothing else, soft costs, in the time that was spent trying to sort through all that and trying to make that all work. It's a monumental problem that was overlooked effectively because some assumptions were made about an IT support system already being in place that could be leveraged. That's easy to say, very difficult to do.
Frank, are you back? Frank was having some phone issues. Let me ask Mark this until Frank comes back, and Jeff, feel free to weigh in. What do you think the opportunity is for EWAs, or, it doesn't need to be ours, but we have almost 500 of them, wireless sales and service providers? I think they should have, I think they obviously are aware that PoC probably should be a part of their solution inventory for their customers in their markets. Would you agree, Mark, that they should look at it as a potential opportunity, not necessarily as a threat?
Absolutely. Because customers are feeling more comfortable with, they feel very comfortable with the voice product already, Mark. They understand push-to-talk for the most part. It's the technology that's been around the longest, for sure, right? And so, we live in a world that is very application-oriented now. And so, without being able to house those applications, some of the wide area networks, privately owned networks, can deliver some speeds, can deliver some applications, but at the end of the day, the commercial networks are built for content, delivery of that content, and so it goes back to my original comment around, understanding what that customer wants and how dependent are they going to be on applications. Is it voice-driven? And I do think EWA can help dissect that environment, by the way, for the sales and service providers out there to maybe help them understand the niches and the requirements of some of those customers, where customers are very heavily invested in licensing and infrastructure, where bringing in a subset of maybe a PLC solution is the right thing, but still helping educate them on leveraging their core, or understanding where their core won't be effective in delivering some of those applications. I mean, without EWA getting out of the sweet spot, I think there's some general models they can create where it makes sense, just like EWA did with the cost model, which is fantastic. So I would say for sure there's some work to be done in that space.
I appreciate that, and I'm in violent agreement. If a trade association's got any value, it's got to help its members prosper and to know what are the risks and what are the risks and where's the good news. And I appreciate that, Mark, and we absolutely should do that because some verticals. Listen, I mean, it would be good just to categorize it or to quantify it. I'm not picking any industry, but doing 2,000 unit PoC in an oil refinery is potentially problematic, right? It just they're wearing gloves. They can't be down. You can't hit the little. Listen, I have trouble hitting my thing, getting it. But thank God for spell check. Well, sort of. But imagine if you were, you have and I've been on these plants, and they're, one of them I was in. They go, oh my God, we had a guy electrocuted himself, right? And the communications has to be instant, and the form features of, and I think the cellular carriers, some of the products are, the form features are being modified to adapt to these type of things, but still, that's different. Now, if you're a electrician with 10 air conditioning kind of guys, maybe. I mean, I had a guy come by today. He's got an iPad and he's taking a picture of my leaky thing for my sprinkler system. I mean, so it depends, right? I think it's great input, Mark. Depending on the application, who you are, what you're using it for, what the app is, what do you need, and I think we could help gather, fits.
From a sales and service provider, sorry to interject, Mark.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
To be able to provide a total solution where you're almost agnostic to what you're presenting to the customer because you're coming about it from their view and what they need, clearly is the most effective way to do it, right? But when you think about those environments, absolutely dictate, a PLMR system, whether it's campus or wide area. Those environments really dictate themselves and are very clear. It's the ones that kind of are overlapping where they have multi-user groups within that environment where I think you have to pull in different technologies.
Right. Let me change just a little bit of this direction on this, where as far as how EWA plays a role in all this. One of the erroneous notions that would always frustrate the decision on the DMR, which is what purchasing again recommended. People will tell you, without having any knowledge, however slight, we can't get the channels and they cost millions of dollars. It'll never work. It'll cost us millions of dollars to get radio channels. EWA, in fact, it was just a gold mine resource for that kind of, to help debunk that kind of notion. And they don't understand the options that they have as far as the different frequency ranges that might be available, anything like that. So I think EWA was invaluable in that. And ultimately, when the DMR solution was selected, that was the best, one of the best consulting team segments of the team that they had going forward.
Well, if that's the project that I remember, it was like 40 facilities, and we were very pleased with very careful conversations, and expectations are all aligned. I think in 37 of those 40 things, we had the same frequency band. Only in a couple areas we just couldn't get it. But then there was another solution we went to that solved the user's requirements. And you're right. In matter of fact, I don't mean to do a little ad here, but I'm going to do an ad anyway. A big part of EWA's growth right now is not particularly frequency coordination, which is always there. We have to do that to help people get licenses. Is the spectrum research? And listen, Bearcom, Frank, Ford, they and others of that ilk that are the pros, they come to us before they have a customer go, we're thinking of doing this. What's the spectrum landscape? What can I get? What can I get? How many exclusive channels? And we do that research so that when you go to the customer, you're well armed with spectrum solutions. And so the expectations get aligned, and that helps you match the appropriate technology in the system with the spectrum that's available on that market. And we sort of call it spectrum engineering or spectrum strategies and other type of things. But that's a big part of, and I think it has to be now, a big part of what EWA does now. Frank, you back online?
Yeah, do you hear me okay?
Yes, hear you perfectly. Let me ask this question, and it's a little different. I think this is potentially, again, a niche, or not necessarily a niche, but it could become a part of the solution for the folks like ABEEP. Do you see this as a potential opportunity, small part, big part? And do you see, what do you see? Well, do you think there'll be a merging of RF in this solution in the future, or what's your crystal ball tell you? And Mark, you feel free to answer after.
Yeah, I think there'll have to be a merging of that. If we look at our industry over the past 20 years and how much has changed, DMR and NextEdge and, Nextel coming and going and new players coming, manufacturers talking about putting LTE chips, inside the radio. I think RF, maybe a campus-style radio with LTE would be a good solution for doing applications plus narrowband push-to-talk. In full disclosure today, I'm not in the office, had used cellular, and today voice over cellular is a challenge. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to merge these things and to have gateways and Wi-Fi built in the radios that allow it to offload onto the Wi-Fi network back to a gateway. So like Mark Crowell said initially, I believe that we're going to see all these things merging together.
You think that's a good thing, Jeff, in the future for?
Well, one of the things that I don't know if it's a good trade or a bad trade, but I use a lot of analogies, but I try to explain to them in this manner. You've got carpet solutions, you got concrete solutions, and back in the old days, a lot of us can remember when you go in a cafeteria or you go in a front office and a walkie-talkie would blow up and everybody would jump in their chair. The cellular solutions in that environment are fantastic because they actually fit the environment. You take a cellular solution out of the concrete, you can't hear it. They try to tweak the audio. If you can hear it, it's going to burn the battery like there's no tomorrow. So you're going to have to trade it in an hour or two later for another phone. And that's if you can maintain a Wi-Fi signal so you can talk over it. So it's just poorly fit for that, while it's perfectly fit for the carpet. So you've got carpet solutions, you've got concrete solutions. The DMR is a concrete solution. You can do anything with that, and out in that environment because that's where it was effectively built. You can tie that with all the newer technologies now. You can tie that right into that carpet solution in the front office, and have an outstanding system that works for everybody. And you won't have to explain to the CIO or CEO why your system doesn't work. So that's my strong conviction about it at this point.
Anybody on the call have any questions? Please use the chat. Most of them, I don't have any questions. But listen, these are experts. I'm very proud that we got Jeff, Frank, and Mark on this webinar. Here's your opportunity for those of you on the webinar, if you have any questions for these three gentlemen. If not, any last thoughts, Mark, Frank, and Jeff?
Well, I'm no shortage of words usually, but first off, I'm flattered to be on the board here, or on the call here with Mark and Frank. But to me, Mark and Frank are suppliers or vendors. And that's the cellular providers of the world. Their suppliers are vendors to me. I say it because I have no stake in any particular form of the technology in the business. It was my job to vet them all, but I wanted to make that clear because the experiences that I had, we really had some good folks trying really hard to make a carpet solution fit under the concrete, and it just didn't. For various reasons, it didn't work. And if anybody on the call is faced with that decision, the thing that you have to fear is the different factions you're going to be dealing with, the maintenance headaches that you're going to have if you try to fit that carpet solution into concrete, and then ultimately, if you get a critical mass of folks that say, get this thing out of here, the CIO has to go back to the CEO and explain why it didn't work, or the CIO is getting called onto the carpet by the CEO, and the CEO is telling them, get that stuff out of the plant and make it get some plant radios in there. So I don't envy anyone that has to make that decision, but I just wanted to point out, I'm not trying to lead you into any technology in particular. I'm trying to tell you what I experienced and what you could very well experience having, being similarly situated.
Thank you, Jeff. Mark, a question has come in. I'm not familiar with this product, and actually EWA doesn't weigh in on the pros and cons of certain products, but I'm not familiar with the Wave, all caps, Wave type of solution. Question came in, do you think the Motorola type of solution will impact the market and the end users? How would it impact?
Yeah, I saw it at the very beginning. It's a really good question. At the very beginning, I made a comment that said, I think this conversation is broader than just PoC and PLMR because there's so many different technologies, and Wave is what you call an over-the-top push-to-talk technology because the client really resides on the handset, and it's very much software-based, and it looks and feels like a combination of push-to-talk over cellular, which it is, and what your two-way radio system feels like, but it helps integrate the smartphone devices that are part of the ecosystem of any customer, and especially any large customer that needs supervisors or managers to have access to the folks that are maybe on the plant floor but don't carry radios, they carry smartphones, and Wave really enables you to do that in a very efficient way, and the user interface feels more like a two-way radio, though it's leveraging Wi-Fi and or cellular. And so I think the answer is yes, Wave 2 will change that environment of how a customer thinks about push-to-talk.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
We have like 2 minutes left. Frank, any, since there's no more questions at this point, any closing remarks, Frank?
Yes, we see some other applications out there. I know we're using a product called Radio Pro. We have customers that are using it that, has the application on their device. It ties them back to their radio network. Once again, we don't see it as a replacement. We see it as an enhancement. So we believe push-to-talk over cellular could be a real enhancement, not to replace, LMR, but to make it better. So I believe the future is bright.
I do too. The future, you got to have that viewpoint, right, Frank?
Yes.
And Mark,
it's bright.
The future's going to be bright because I'm not ready to start being a golf cart manager yet. Let me see. Shout out to CTI. Randy, explain what have you seen any other cellular PTT approaches that have more mission-critical radio type? Real quick, we have time probably for this question. The question came in, gentlemen. You can see it. Have you seen any cellular push-to-talk approaches that have more mission-critical radio type devices? Mark, Frank?
Yeah. So I'll take a quick stab at it. I think that I'll stay away from which carriers and talk more about the devices out there. I think that from a pure device perspective, an integrated, ruggedized device like a Sonum device is something that if you're gonna need data and you're gonna need push-to-talk voice and you're gonna need the kind of screen to read large data like an enterprise-grade smartphone. I think there's solutions like that out there. I think the push-to-talk, whether it's Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T touts, their ability to appeal to the public safety or mission-critical or business-critical market, to me, they tend to operate very similar from a latency perspective, somewhat from a coverage perspective, depending on where you're at. But there's some devices out there that with various clients, push-to-talk clients on them, that operate better in a mission-critical environment.
Excellent. For those of you on the webinar, thank you very much again for your time this afternoon. Jeff, Mark, and Frank, thank you so much for adding to this webinar and the information and your experiences sharing with us. And again, for those on the call, thanks. EWA's here. Call us, contact us, and thank you all for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much.